Well then, Daryl, you're back at hosting, so whenever you're ready to hit the record button, go for it.
Already doing it.
What? What?
Yeah.
How dare you, sir?
How dare I record what we said we were going to record?
You didn't tell me the mic was on.
Oh, my
when
bad.
we turned on all of our mics. You didn't tell me.
Yeah, I just started like maybe a minute ago.
Oh, okay.
15 minutes ago.
Well, it'll go smoother from here on out. Well, welcome everybody to episode 29 of the Cinnamon. I'd ask how everybody is doing, but no one's really going anywhere.
No one should be going anywhere.
Well, that's true, unless you're in Florida, in which case, fuck it. I don't understand. I've been rewatching some episodes of The Good Place, and the amount of times that show dunks on Florida, particularly Jacksonville, and apparently someone yesterday on Twitter went, and now you understand why Jason was from Jacksonville. So
I've always said Florida's a sunny place for shady people.
Apparently so. So just something new, a surprise for all of our listeners today. We have a special guest with us. Coming all the way from a galaxy far, far away is Adam Frazier.
Hey guys.
Light applause in the background.
Yeah.
I'm going to find the worst, weakest applause I can find and just edit that right on in there.
Can you just play like the background noise from the pod race in Phantom Menace?
Okay, yeah, there we go.
Just
there we go.
The oohs and the ahs. Yeah.
It's going to be in a loop constantly announcing, someone do it.
Well, for those of you who aren't familiar with Frazier, and we'll get a little bit more in depth with him in a little bit, but he is the operator of Poppin' Pizza, right? Or Poppin' Pizzas?
Yeah.
His website where he reviews film. He's a member of the North Carolina Film Critics Association, member of the Southeastern Film Critics Association, as well as co-writer of the horror film Feral, which screened in Charlotte 2018. Am I remembering that right?
I think it was at the 2017 Charlotte Film Festival, and then got a release subsequently after that through IFC Midnight. So
yes,
somewhere
it did. Yes, it did.
Right on.
So, you know, we got big time guests this week.
I'm punching out of my weight class.
Fancy. So, how you guys doing? How you guys doing with everything?
Not bad.
Yeah, that's pretty much what sums it up. Not bad.
I mean, times are tough. Like I really have no room to complain because my schedule hasn't really changed a whole lot, because before all this happened, I was staying indoors, watching movies, avoiding people, and ordering takeout, and I'm still doing that. So I can't really complain that much. But.
Right on. And actually, you've started taking on your Instagram account. You've started sharing photos, not just of what you're watching, but just stuff you're recommending now, right?
Yeah. I just and actually sort of Poppin' Pizza's sort of part of that in that I've been writing about movies online for like 15 years now. And I've went from doing like little columns that are like capsule reviews to 1,500 word reviews to 3,000 word essays. I mean, you've been up and down the gauntlet of how you can write about a movie. But recently I've just decided that my goal is really to get someone to watch something instead of to lecture them about it. Because so often it's like, you'll write a 1,500 word review on this movie, and are they even going to see it? And if they do see it, will they double back to read what you wrote about it? And so Poppin' Pizza and using Instagram and stuff's more just like, hey, this exists. If you like stuff like this, check it out. And here's, a paragraph about it essentially. So, so Instagram, I've just been posting the weirdest movies that I own. So
I was wondering about that. I was wondering if it was coming from your catalog or if it was stuff that you were going to be reviewing in the future.
Yeah, it pretty much so far, it's all been stuff that I've had for a while, from Arrow or Scream Factory or Synapse or Vinegar Syndrome or any of the crazy kind of niche labels. So,
and we'll get into some of that in a minute.
Oh yeah.
Well, what have you watched recently that you'd recommend to everybody?
Wow. Well, new stuff. I I'd love everyone to go see, and by go see, I mean watch it on their couch. VFW by Joe Begos that just came out through Fangoria. It's so awesome. It's like Assault on Precinct 13 meets Night of the Living Dead. I mean, it's like the best siege film I've seen probably since Green Room.
Okay. I need to see that one.
So I'd really recommend that one. And then last night we Warner Archive recently did this like 4 for $44 sale, and I'm like, oh great, that's the last thing I need right now is to panic buy more Blu-rays. But that's exactly what I did, and I got Jack Shoulder's The Hidden from 1987 and Abel Ferreira's Body Snatchers from 1993, which neither I had seen before. I'd heard a lot about both of them, but was sort of waiting for, I guess, Blu-ray or, a nice remaster to come around. And I really enjoyed both of those. The Hidden stars Kyle MacLachlan, and it's not at all what I expected. It's kind of a Body Snatcher sort of vibe, which is why we did a double feature with it. But there's a lot more going on with it, and there's a lot of Elm Street alumni in it because it came out, I think, in '87 from New Line. So there's a lot of interesting little connections there. But I would definitely recommend both of those. They were super awesome.
Right on. And VFW, I think, was also released in partnership with RLJE Films.
That's right.
Which they do. That is a distributor that I only became familiar with about 2 years ago or so, and they have been a part of some phenomenal movies.
Yeah,
that aren't just in one genre either. And I think they started a horror branch to do some stuff in as well. Dead Sight got released that way. I think VFW was just through their main, though. Yeah. But I've mostly from you, because I only know 2 people that have seen it so far. But it's apparently one to watch. And from everything I've heard about it, if you're saying you should totally see this shit, it's amazing, then I'll probably watch it underneath a blanket. So I probably
And honestly, it kind of feels like the sort of movie that if they did a Grindhouse 2, one of the segments would be VFW.
Sold.
Like it has that kind of vibe and energy to it. It's super fun.
Okay. All right. Fine. I'll add it to my Netflix. I still get discs.
Yes.
So right on. What about you, Daryl? Anything you've seen recently?
Yes, there is, but it is now all in preparation for my 100 greatest sci-fi films. So what I have seen recently, I will keep under wraps because I don't want to reveal what all is on the list.
If you didn't tell us that it was for the list, then you could have talked about it. Instead, you got to put a tease in this show for another show. It's like you want people to stop listening to go do the other show. That's mean. That's not synergy.
That's synergy.
You've just been watching Jupiter Ascending every night for like 3 weeks straight.
It was on TV at work the other day, and I had to do a lot of heavy campaigning to get that changed to anything else.
I am so disappointed by that film, personally. I rewatched it within the last year because Crystal hadn't seen it, and I hadn't watched it since the theater. And rewatching it, I'm just going, there's so many really interesting things that the Wachowskis put in here, and none of it coalesces. None of it really comes together in a way that's like, it could have been so cool. And just for some reason, it doesn't work.
Yeah, that and Valerian.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that wasn't them.
A lot of potential that just went nowhere. I think that movie, like, lives and dies by its casting, and I just don't think any of the casting was right in that movie.
yeah. Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne are not leading actors and actresses.
Yeah, Dane DeHaan is not like a leading man, like he's a good actor. But he's very much like a sick boy, like he always looks very sickly and weak and like he's on the verge of transforming into something like a goblin. And I just didn't buy him as this like Han Solo type.
Yeah, not as a playboy that he was supposedly being. That didn't do it for me.
Yeah. No, I do agree. He is a good actor. I've heard very good things about, what was it? Cure for Wellness?
Cure for Wellness.
I've heard that's fantastic. I haven't gotten around to it. But I agree, he's got a certain style with his performance and his delivery that it just didn't lend itself to Valerian at all, which was a shame. And particularly it being Luc Besson, I was rooting for it, and then it doesn't But then again, I'm very the professional in Fifth Element with Luc Besson, so I'll show up to anything he's been a part of.
Yeah,
and just keep my fingers crossed.
And I'm the only guy in the world who likes Lucy. I thought.
Hey, right here.
Good man. Good man.
Don't mention Lucy in the presence of my wife. She will get so worked up.
Love that movie.
It's insane.
It's because she latches onto the science, which is fair. That's
Sure.
her area.
Yeah.
But they just dismantle so much actual science, but try and use it as actual science.
Yeah.
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 I still haven't shown her Ad Astra, and I really, really want to because I've wanted to revisit it for some time. But mostly because, have you guys seen Ad Astra?
Yeah.
Twice. Okay, so you haven't seen it, Fraser. The short version is there's an event that's happening way off in space that's impacting the Earth. And Brad Pitt sent out into space because they think where this thing is emanating from is where his father was sent to doing a scientific expedition. Well, but the explanation for what's happening and from where it's coming, I'm pretty sure is movie hokum. But I'm too dumb to know if it's movie hokum. So I need to have her watch it, and we just haven't had the time to do it.
Yeah.
See, my theory is it is movie hokum, and the writers are like, the general audience is too dumb to know it's movie hokum, and that's how they got the movie hokum by.
This sounds cool. I bet it's true.
I thought Ad Astra was a documentary myself.
You and I have certain amount of set rules. A movie like The Avengers and science fiction, when they create rules that exist and they abide by them, no problem. But when you take something and you try and base it on real science and you get the science wrong, then you can go fuck yourself, which is what Crystal would say.
Right.
That's where she has the problem.
And then you've got Neil deGrasse Tyson out there saying like, oh, police can't do that. Yeah, we got it, Neil.
Yeah, suspension of disbelief, Neil. We know what's up.
Exactly. And there's a big difference between suspension of disbelief and here's hard science that we're just going to completely get wrong. And that's why I'm curious if it's Hollywood hokum or if it's something else. But
we've gotten far away from what we were talking about. What have you seen, Doug?
I've seen quite a few things, but the one that I can't recommend enough, and I'm actually allowed to on this show now, is a movie that by the time this airs has already hit Netflix. Ladies and gentlemen, Extraction. Holy shit. I wish it had been released in theaters. I wish it could have been released in theaters. This film, I didn't know anything about it other than Chris Hemsworth is starring in it and the Russos are attached. So, okay, cool. Could be interesting. I watched a trailer for it, and if those of you listening or if you two gentlemen don't know, Hemsworth plays a retrieval expert who gets sent in to pick up a kid who's been kidnapped, and shit goes sideways. And from the trailer, I kept thinking of, 16 Blocks?
Yeah,
where Bruce Willis is trying to get Mos Def through a gauntlet to get to testify or something.
Mos Def just wants to bake a cake.
And it kind of is that film, but holy shit, the action sequences are amazing. Sam Hargrave, this is his first time feature film, but he has been a stunt person, he has been a fight coordinator, and he's been a second unit director on films like Deadpool 2, Atomic Blonde, and including, I think, the last two Avengers films. So this guy has experience with all the things you need for an amazing action film. There are so many moments where I want to see this character, Tyler Rake, that Hemsworth plays, in a movie with John Wick or what's-her-face from Atomic Blonde.
Charlize.
The fighting styles that he uses. Okay, one moment, he's fighting a bunch of dudes. He picks up one dude to fling him at another one just to break the guy's neck. It is crazy, some of these fight sequences. And several of them, particularly an 11-minute sequence that is edited to be one take, kind of like 1917. It reminded me of The Raid 2, Brundle. Between that cinematography, that direction, and the stunt work, it was amazing. I can't wait to see it again. And to paraphrase Bong Joon-ho, I honestly think the one problem with its screening in theaters is the 1-inch There's a lot of it that is in a foreign language, so there's quite a bit of subtitles.
Okay.
But I loved this fucking movie, and I look forward to watching it again. I actually think this is some of Hemsworth's best work.
Friday.
Oh,
It's Netflix.
It comes out the 24th of April on Netflix, so by the time this airs, it will have come out.
Awesome.
You are the first people I can talk to about it because it's been embargoed, and my review doesn't drop for a few days. And it's really good, y'all. I was surprised at how good it is.
What is it with this new wave of stunt people becoming directors? I'm liking it, man. Between Leach, Stahelski, this guy, and they all seem to have a weird tie because the Atomic Blonde tie in there. Didn't Leach or Stahelski help out on the first Deadpool? Or John Wick. Yes. I think they helped out on the John Wick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm liking it. I'm liking it. More good mid-budget action films. Like from these guys, I'm cool with.
Yeah, and it's kind of like having an actor become a director, like, say, Greta Gerwig. She gets some great performances from her cast because she understands what their process is. Yeah. And much the same way when you are doing an action film and you've got someone who's designed stunts and worked on stunts, suddenly behind the camera, they know how to pull the best stuff. There's a making of video that Netflix put out, and Sam is actually attached to one of the cars with the camera as they're driving. So like he's in the middle of this shit. It's kind of great. So do recommend. If you have a big TV, watch it on that because some of the action sequences are pretty great. And what's really neat is this climactic moment in the film takes place on a bridge. Apparently, they only had it for so many days and they needed more time than they had. So they had one unit and the other unit shooting on opposite ends of the bridge just to get the sequence done. So they were doing it at the exact same time and had to block it so you couldn't see the other end. Oh, now, there are some stuff that's going to be kind of predictable with this type of, character with a difficult past. But fuck it, man, the action sequences are so good, and they just keep the tension running all throughout. Is good. Do recommend.
Yeah. Right on. I guess I will have to add that to the my next Friday evening list.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, with all that said, now, Fraser, to swing back to you before we get to our topic of the day, which we came up with you in mind. I have a couple questions for you. Now, you said that you've been doing this for 15 years, and you've written countless reviews in different forms, as you've mentioned. How did you get into this? Like, what made you, did you pop out writing? Like, what, how did you get into this? What's your origin story?
So, I've always loved movies, and in, middle school, high school, displayed some ability at writing, but it wasn't really until college, in which I came into college majoring in computer science, and I hated it because of just all the math.
Amen. Amen.
And I was taking a lot of electives and a lot of just the general classes you have to take. And the English professor sort of pulled me aside after class and was like, you're pretty good at writing. Maybe you should do something with it. And so I had already been wanting to drop computer science. So I went ahead and I was undeclared for a year and found myself basically in every department at Radford University where I went, and found myself in the media studies department as a journalism major, which really blended. The reason I didn't go down the English route is because I thought, I don't know if I necessarily want to teach, and I'm more interested in film than literature per se. So media studies and journalism sort of combine the love of film and the writing aspect. So I took a lot of film classes, took a lot of writing classes. I was the editor of the arts and entertainment section for our online magazine, and that was sort of the beginning for me there.
Very cool.
Right on.
And you have, at least within the social circles that I'm a part of with you, you are well known for two areas of expertise. You've even been writing for Slash Film from time to time on one of them. Star Wars.
Rodney Dangerfield.
Gets no respect. No respect
Back
at
to
all.
School.
Well, that's why I get no respect.
But
Ladybugs.
where is the intersection for you of Star Wars and horror films? Because those seem to be the two areas in which you know the most about anything from nuts to bolts. Looking at you right now, you're on the bridge of whatever ship Leia got ripped from. You
Fan of four, man.
tell me the make, model, and where it was made, and whether or not Han Solo helped make it. But, or excuse me, his dad. His dad worked on the Millennium Falcon, right?
But worked on a Corellian freighter.
Exactly. Yeah. So, where's the intersection for you?
Yeah. So, I was born in '84, and so I just missed out on the original Star Wars trilogy, but I had an older sister, and she had a lot of the old Kenner toys. And so I don't remember a time before Star Wars because those were sort of my first toys. And so I always think of the sequence from E.T. where Elliot is showing E.T. like, oh, this is Greedo and this is Hammerhead. Like that was essentially my entire childhood. Like I just played with those toys. And eventually, you know, at least my first memories of watching the movies on VHS, that I just watched at least one Star Wars movie every day for probably 3 or 4 years of my life. There was always one on in the background while I was playing with toys and stuff. And as part of that, one of those original VHS box sets, I don't know if you remember, there was actually a 4th tape that was called From Star Wars to Jedi. And it was a documentary sort of about it definitely touched on the aspects of making Star Wars an empire, but really it focused heavily on Return of the Jedi and specifically the creature shop and creating Jabba the Hutt and all the incredible work that guys like Stuart Freeborn and Phil Tippett did. And at a very young age, I figured out essentially that not only was I interested in these imaginative worlds and these crazy creatures and all this stuff, but I was just as fascinated by the people who made them and how they made them. And I think that's really what connected to horror, because I think for a lot of people that the entryway to horror is like, oh, I'm squeamish, or I'm really scared, or I startle easily, and so they're less likely to check out a horror movie. But for me, it was more, I was already fascinated with Alien being that perfect sort of segue from space fantasy to horror in that science fiction horror area, where I was just fascinated by the xenomorph and how it was created. And I mean, I remember there was a series of books at my library, Tales of Terror by Crestwood House. Some people might remember those, but they were almost like storybooks. They were meant for kids, but they were about like the Terminator and Halloween and Amityville Horror and Jaws and stuff. And they told you the plot of the movie. They had images from the movie, and then they talked a little about the making of the movie. And I think the idea of the books was, hey, you're 7, you're not old enough to watch, Aliens, maybe, but you can check this book out and read about it. And I always used those books as like weapons against my parents. Like, can we please rent Alien 3? No, you're in 2nd grade. You can't rent Alien 3. I'm like, but I just read this book and it tells me everything that happens in the movie. And look, and like, I'm showing her a picture of like the alien's tongue going into a guy's head. And I'm like, I've already seen it. Like, it's here. You let me rent this from the library. And so I won a lot of arguments that way. But yeah, that's certainly where the crossover is for me. Just the love of creatures and the imagination needed to realize these worlds, and Alien, Predator, RoboCop. When I think of those movies, I just think about the world that it puts me in, and the incredible work of guys like Stan Winston and Rob Bottin and stuff like that. So,
I would also hazard a guess to say those books did a lot to normalize that sort of scary stuff. We just came out with the last episode of season 13 of Paprika, where the brackets were horror movie brackets, and the host was talking about going from, things are scary because at the root of all of it is unknown, right? So then once you kind of know what it is, you can kind of understand it. It makes it less scary. So if you take books like that and you give it to a young person and say, hey, check it out. You can see the insides, the mechanics of this thing that you see on screen. it's not going to be that scary. So when you do see it, you can make it all the way through and you can appreciate the film for what it is.
Yeah, and my mom, I get all of my geek from my mom and my sister, because my mom's a huge horror fan. She's in the Stephen King fan club. She was in the book club when I was a kid. And so she didn't necessarily have an issue with exposing me to some of this stuff at a young age if she thought I could handle it. A lot of it was like RoboCop, for instance. I watched it probably 50 times as a kid, but always whenever RoboCop died or they go into like the surgery scene, like my mom would fast forward, or like I'd be watching it on TV and Ed 209 turning that guy into hamburger meat would be cut out of it. And so then like years later when I'm 12 and I like watch it on my own, I'm like, oh, I get it. I understand why I never saw this before, so.
Now, as part of the contingent that, I've talked about it before on the show. I would, and I still do sometimes, see things when I wake up in the middle of the night. I have a vivid imagination, but now I know that particular thing has a name, hypergogia. It's actually what Ari Aster used in Hereditary, so that when Alex Wolff is seeing his sister and it turns into a basketball, that's that type of thing. So I watched Hereditary and was like, I know what this is. It doesn't scare me. But as someone who came to horror that way, we were recently talking in one of the groups about how I've never seen all of Jaws. It's that kind of stuff. But I've personally found with shows like Face Off, where I could see the creation of the applications and other things that Crystal would watch or get into, that now watching horror, while I still get uncomfortable, Color Out of Space, for example, I didn't have nightmares, nothing like that. I went to sleep just fine. But there was stuff that made me uncomfortable. But at the same time, I'm watching and I look at Crystal and go, how do you think they made that? How do you think they put that together? So I'm able to handle more horror now when it's not just outright, we're going to cut people up.
Right.
But when it's that sort of, we're going to create something or some sort of object or creation, it's really fascinating how they put that together. And certainly with our topic today, I'm sure there's quite a few films where they had to get clever with their applications and creations. So very cool. Very cool. Do you have any new projects that you're going to be working on anytime soon that you can tease us about, whether it's for Pop and Pizza or for any publications you have coming out?
Pop and Pizza, I don't really Pop and Pizza is a newsletter. It goes out at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. I don't really put a lot of like planning into that. It's more just based on what I see that week or what I stumble across that I find interesting. Other than that, I'm doing a couple of Star Wars Bits column every month for Slash Film. I do a monthly column for Nightmare on Film Street that basically provides a rundown of all the Scream Factory Blu-ray releases for that month. So I'll be working on those. In terms of like sort of screenwriting stuff, I have a bunch of ideas, but it's just, working a full-time job, doing all this stuff on the side. And, that's sort of on the back burner, but there's definitely always something going on.
And you're talking to people right now that completely understand that.
Yeah.
There's even if the world weren't basically this box shape right now in the Zoom screen,
yeah,
there's just a lot going on. So yeah, but at least it's good to know. We know where to find your writing. Nightmare on
Film Street.
Film Street.
Yeah.
Nightmare on Film Street. Pop and Pizza / film, of course. Which, Daryl, is there any? I've asked the questions that I've written down, and he gave me even way more than that. Do you have any questions for Adam?
No, you handled that wonderfully, Doug.
and I should say that I also write for First Showing, but First Showing is really a theatrical driven site. And of course, right now, that's kind of an issue. So
little bit. But that is all. Thank you. I forgot about First Showing because it's been a minute.
Yeah.
It has been a minute. Not necessarily specifically for you. Just the fact that we haven't had anything released in the theaters since March 13th.
Yeah, the last screening I went to even was at like Invisible Man. So that's going way back.
Yeah, I sorely regret falling asleep in the last film that I saw in theaters.
But that's very on brand for you. So it's
That's on brand for Baker. That's not on brand for me.
I don't know. I don't know. Well, that's true. If you'd gone to the wrong theater, that would have been on brand.
That's very on brand for me.
So, for today's topic of discussion, in your honor, Mr. Frazier, because we wanted to make you look as good as possible, and also just because you can enlighten us and our listeners for this, but we decided to discuss our favorite cult films. Yes. And I don't know about you guys, Frazier, this may have been hard for you because this is your genre, but I know for me, looking through it, I was surprised doing my research about how many films are considered cult classics or cult films that are today now widely popular. Right. So trying to come up with a list that still fit was really weird because we're talking about movies like Clue, which is now widely popular, but then there's Return of the Killer Tomatoes, which is still very, very small. But then you've got Barton Fink, The Boondock Saints, Mandy, The Blues Brothers, Dark City, Flash Gordon, The Monster Squad, Donnie Darko. Did you know Dude, Where's My Car counts as a cult classic?
Yeah, because nobody watched it in theaters.
Yeah. I did! We've got it downstairs. Speed Racer. Well, that one, absolutely, I totally get, and I love that movie. Galaxy Quest, Big Trouble in Little China. The list goes on. We could literally do a whole show of just listing these. But instead, let's talk about 3 of our favorite cult classics. So, guest of honor, can you please get us started? What is one of your favorite cult films?
So I think what you were talking about there is just so crucial in that a cult film has so many different definitions, and there's so many almost like subgenres of cult, whether it's so bad it's good, midnight movies, art exploitation experimental movies, and then just in general B movies, a lot of just straight up genre movies that might not have been well received at the time, like John Carpenter's The Thing. Like, it's hard to believe that would be considered a cult movie, but it failed. In 1982, it came out, weeks, months after E.T. Nobody wanted to see that. So, it's you could probably do 10 podcasts about different genres of cult films. But so I tried to hit, kind of across the spectrum. And so my first pick is the midnight movie, the audience participation movie. Certainly not the first cult movie, but I think the one that everybody knows when you say the word, and that's Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Right on. Right on. Why? What is this a film you enjoy in any way, shape, or form? Does it connect with you in any way?
Yeah, I love it. I didn't see it until probably like high school. I didn't see it when I was young. But even without seeing it, man, those lips. you know that cover.
Yeah.
And even though I didn't see it until high school, I knew what it was about. How do you not know that image of Tim Curry as Dr. Frankenfurter? I mean, it's just so iconic. It's like, Elsa Lancaster is the Bride of Frankenstein, honestly. And so, yeah, I really enjoy it. And every time I watch it, I enjoy it more and more. I just love the music in it. I love the performances. I love the sort of the production design, the set decoration. I mean, for someone who loves science fiction and horror and has an appreciation for, the 50s kind of B movies, the Atomic Age stuff. And it's just a never ending, roll call of references and stuff like that. And so it's very enjoyable to me.
Right on. Right on. Daryl, what's your first pick?
My first pick I'm going with the film that I saw before I had to fly out to Korea for a month, and no one heard of it. And I came back and everyone had heard of it. Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was a weird circumstance. Like, my buddy was like, "Hey, there's this weird movie playing at the theater. We got nothing else to do. Let's go see it." So we went and watched it. I think 2 weeks later, I fly to Korea, and I come back a month later, and everybody's like, "You have to see this crazy movie called Napoleon." It's just a weird blend of awkwardness and kind of like that smack in the middle of America slice of life style deal. I think the performances you get at the movie was John Grease. That's the name I couldn't think of. Uncle Rico. It's still my favorite John Grease character. John Heater. He didn't have a whole lot of success outside of that, but I love him in this movie. It's just so weird and awkward. And I think it's one of those, you have to have a certain type of humor in order to get it. And when I wikied what their definition of a cult film is, one of their definitions is quotables, right? And quotables kind of like the inside jokes to people who like that film. A slew of those come out of Napoleon Dynamite, so I could not have this list without a shout out to and a little bit of a heartfelt movie too.
Yeah,
good movie. Yeah,
and John Heder, like that, he couldn't do anything else. That role was just so iconic. It's like, what do you do? I mean, he did Blades of Glory and a handful of comedies that were enjoyable, but that's like his Luke Skywalker, his Frodo. It's kind of hard to come back from.
Yeah. Maybe you should take it a gritty action movie after that.
He did do a really cute indie comedy / drama called When Jeff Tried to Save the World. I think about 2 years ago. I do recommend it. I embarrassed myself with two of the cast members when Daryl and I were at the Critics' Choice Awards because it was a commercial break, and two of them they're in the show Pen 15 that they co-created, I believe. And I saw them standing at the end of our table, and I looked up, was like, holy shit, you guys were amazing in When Jeff Saved the World. And then I said that they were in the movie with Bill Hader, and they looked at me like, what? And I looked at Daryl and went, oh my God, I said that. I'm just going to fall into the earth now. God. But I do recommend that film, and he is really good in it. So my first choice is actually, I'm going to reorder these if only because Fraser took mine, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It was going to be my second film, but I'm going to make it the first one to discuss. I found out about this film by accident. It was in the early days of FX when they first started, and they were running old episodes of Wonder Woman and the Greatest American Hero and Green Hornet, whatever. And it was Halloween, and all of my friends were out, and I was by myself at the house. My brothers were out of the house. My parents were gone. So I turned on the TV, and FX was showing the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I was like, what the F is this? And I used to watch USA Up All Night, which I think Elvira hosted for a little while and whatever else. So I was used to seeing some strange-ass shit. And I was like, what is this? And I ended up showing it to my friends, and none of them were really into it. But when I then went to a camp where a Jewish camp up in upstate New York, a bunch of those kids were into it. So we did some dress up and whatever else when we got together one time. And then in college, I brought it to my entertainment board, and I ran it for 4 years. I wasn't on the entertainment board the last year, but I still helped them pull that off. So I was riffraff. I am a card-carrying member of the fan club. It's in my desk over here.
Wow.
That's how deep it went for me. And I still have some what will be lifelong friends from college, thanks to the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's not only because for cinema it's iconic, but it has been freeing for me. It is something that brings people together. And while there are some things that are still problematic with it, I love everything about that film. And I have a tendency to sing many of the songs. Just, rose tint my world. Keeps me safe from my trouble and pain.
And
especially these days. In
2005, I think it was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. So, I mean, it is a culturally, historically significant film. So, kind of crazy that it was a complete flop when it came out.
Movie's got legs. So, what's your second pick, Mr. Fraser?
Okay. So, number 2 is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Ooh.
Oh.
Now, the first movie is a classic. You could probably call it a cult classic if you wanted. But the second one, which came out in 1986 and is directed by Tobe Hooper, is such a weird departure from the original. And I think that was part of why it completely flopped when it came out. Texas Chainsaw comes out in 1974, along with Halloween. Those two movies completely reshape the horror genre. And then by the time you get around to 1986, you have the Elm Street series is going hard. The Friday the 13th series is going hard. And the slasher subgenre has really established itself. And then you hear that Tobe Hooper is going to do a sequel to essentially the greatest horror movie of the time. and you have a lot of expectations about what that movie is going to be. And instead he goes in a complete different direction and does a black comedy in which the poster for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is actually a play on the Breakfast Club. Like it has Leatherface and his family like posed, and it's very obvious what it's trying to do. But at the time, I think people just wanted like an unrelenting, scary ass horror movie like the original, and so it didn't do so well. But it has aged remarkably. I mean, we're talking about a movie in which Dennis Hopper dual wields chainsaws and has a chainsaw lightsaber fight essentially with Leatherface. It's hilarious. It's really a satire of sort of the 80s excess and everything that was going on in the genre at the time. And it just has some of the wildest characters, some of the craziest dialogue. Bill Moseley as Chop Top is like fantastic. Caroline Williams, who plays Stretch, is one of my favorite final girls. And some of the lines that come out of Jim Saito, who plays the dad or the cook, sort of the patriarch of the Sawyer family, is just insane. Like, he's at the beginning of the movie, he's at like a chili competition and he's holding a trophy with chili in the trophy. And the chili is spilling all over his shirt. And he's talking about how his family, loves and respects prime meat. And someone's trying the chili and they obviously get like a bone. And he's like, oh, that must be one of those hard shelled peppercorns. So, it's just insane. And it gets better with age. And if you haven't seen it, if you've avoided it because of sort of the expectation of what it should be, I would say absolutely watch it, because it is hilarious and truly unhinged in almost every way you can imagine.
I'm taking advantage of the fact that we're doing this on Zoom from home. I'm just looking at the posters that IMDb has for this. My jaw has hit the floor. Y'all, if you haven't seen this poster, he's not bullshitting you. It is the fucking Breakfast Club. After a decade of silence, the buzz is back. They've even got one that looks like The Shining, in that he's got the chainsaw coming through the door, and there's just a face.
Yeah, it's really interesting how, because I feel like if we saw a poster like that today, right, like the Breakfast Club poster, we would all immediately know what it's trying to convey.
Yeah.
It's just weird that was missed at the time, but then you have to consider that there isn't the internet. There isn't this like widespread kind of viral explanation of the way things are. And I guess we still miss the mark all the time, because a movie like Jennifer's Body or Cabin in the Woods, where people thought they were going to get like a legit scary horror movie, and then they hated it because that's not what it was. That still happens every year, I guess. So,
yeah, expectations are a bitch. Like they will murder any positive experience you might have, because you're going into it with all of that. I think Noel Manning calls it cinematic baggage.
Yeah,
because you go in with that expectation, and then you're not open to what actually happens. I know it's something I'm guilty of myself, which is why I try to go back and revisit some stuff. And unfortunately, Man of Steel is still terrible, and it's just nothing I can do about that. But Daryl, what's your second pick?
I'm gonna let that one slide this time. Matter of fact, I watched it a couple of days ago.
I know you did.
It's wonderful. My second pick started out is a whole trilogy. It started out as just the second movie, and I was like, and the first one's kind of culty too. And I thought about it. The third one is really culty, and it's the Evil Dead trilogy.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And we talked earlier about about inventiveness in your filmmaking. I mean, when you're so severely limited by the budget that you have, you got to get real creative with stuff. And boy, do they get real creative in the first Evil Dead. And in the Evil Dead 2, they got a little bit more money, somehow based off the strength of Evil Dead 1. And they were still just as creative as they were on the first movie. And it kind of furthers the mythos. And you see that there's the breadcrumbs leading into Army of Darkness. And I think Bruce Campbell is a one-man show in Evil Dead 2. There's definitely more people in the movie, but he is the whole anchor, and he holds that whole movie down. Plus, you get a lot of your best quotes come out of Evil Dead 2. And then 3 is just nonsense, insanity, and chaos. And they just leaned, the shift, the swing from Evil Dead, which is trying to be a legit scary thing, to a little bit more self-awareness in Evil Dead 2, and I think there's a good mixture of a pretty good mixture of this. There's some stuff there's some great tension in there, but also some great comedy in there, and they just swing fully into it in Army of Darkness, and they lean all in, and it's the utter goof and the camp that I love about all three of these movies, man. So easily the Evil Dead joints are on the list as far as culty films are concerned. I came to this late. I was 20 maybe when I first saw them all, and I was like, I don't do the scary. I really don't do the scary. My friends like, just sit down and shut up. We're gonna watch these movies. You're gonna love them. And sure enough, shout outs to him, because I did love them.
Yeah, Evil Dead is really interesting. It's one that another part of just my fascination with horror is like when I was a kid, and I'm sure you guys have this, of going to the video store and you go past the horror section and you just see all of these crazy ass covers, and you're like, what could possibly be happening in this movie? And you pick it up and you read the back, and there's a couple more images on the back, and you're like, oh my God, I have to see Sleepaway Camp right now. And Evil Dead was certainly one of those where I just saw the cover. I was like, oh my God, what must be happening in this movie? And that movie, I don't know if it ever would have really taken off the way it did had it not been for that quote on the cover from Stephen King that basically said it was the most ferociously original horror film of 1982. And I think people saw that quote, saw that cover, and they were like, I have to see this right now. And I don't know if the movie lives up to that quote, but it certainly got people's eyeballs on it and made it enough of a success to where we got those other two movies. And I think that going right into just the definition of cult, I mean, that's part of it, right? It's like Evil Dead didn't really play in a theater. If it did, probably only very select cities. So a lot of the times the way you connect with these movies is just taking a chance on it at the video store.
Right.
I still miss the video store. We've got, I think Vizart Video is the only one that I think remains as a mom and pop shop, and they're now a nonprofit. Is I think the only way that they can really stick around, and with everything going on, who knows if they will. But going through, I had the opposite response, by the way, Fraser, to the horror films. This will surprise you, I'm sure. Is I still don't remember which Nightmare on Elm Street it was. I'm sure you'll be able to tell me immediately. Yeah. But I turned over the back because for me it was morbid fascination. What the F is this? I do not want to watch it, but I want to know about it. I flip over the cover and there's an image of someone in a bed and Freddy's mouth about to eat them. And from that point forward, I slept with my legs curled up because I went, well, I'll hear the bed being eaten. I can get out.
So I believe you're referring to Dream Warriors.
There we go.
And just to color sort of my background a little more is I was so obsessed with Nightmare on Elm Street as a kid that I actually, sometimes as a child, you sleep with a stuffed animal. I slept with a Freddy Krueger that had a pull string, and you pulled the string on it, and he basically said stuff like, I'm your boyfriend now. I'm like, what does that mean? Why am I sleeping with this? It's like, Freddy Krueger definitely murders children. Like, that's his MO. But I sort of spun it around as, oh, well, he'll protect me. Like, he's going to protect my dreams. So, that's why I'm here, I guess.
There you go. There you go.
That is the weirdest story I've ever heard.
Very well.
That is amazing. But we all have stuff like that with something.
Right.
It's and particularly with Connor, who's almost 5, the decisions and the thought process he makes to rationalize why he sleeps with certain things or doesn't. Sure, man, whatever works. So Fraser, sure, man, whatever works. Whatever gets you to sleep at night. That's awesome.
All right, Doug, what you got for your next
well, I now am once again going to rearrange my list because, of course, the Army of Darkness had to be on my list. Of course it had to be on there. I love this movie so much. I'm a huge fan of Bruce Campbell's. I've met him met him once, gone to events with him twice. He once mocked me at a screening of, it was My Name is Bruce. They screened My Name is Bruce while I was living in D.C. and he was doing a screening, and I think I asked him something about Burn Notice, and he insulted me, and I was like, this is the greatest day ever. Because getting a sarcastic response from Bruce Campbell is the greatest. But when we were in LA and we were at the library, Daryl is reading 2001: A Space Odyssey because he can read the shooting script of any film, and he chooses that. And I, of course, choose Army of Darkness because I'm an idiot. I can read any shooting script that this library has, and I go to Army of Darkness. I love this film so much. I was introduced to the Evil Dead series backwards. My middle brother worked in at a rental store. I think it was Hollywood Video. And I always wanted to work in one. And then most of them shut down by the time I wanted to get a job, and I didn't want to work for Blockbuster Video. So he showed me Army of Darkness, and I went, oh, this shit is stupid. This is straight Three Stooges meets a horror movie, which, of course, is Sam Raimi is a huge Three Stooges fan. And so I watched them backwards. I went from Army of Darkness to Evil Dead 2 to Evil Dead 1. And I could see where, okay, this was really fake in the claymation and Army of Darkness, and it's people holding skeleton things poking, Bruce. And I could see the application process as we work our way backwards. So I found them much easier to adapt with. And since then, I've seen Evil Dead the musical twice. I've got a mug downstairs. Like, I'm all in the Necronomicon, and how do we get one that Connor can sleep with, So it's made from the flesh of regular humans. It'll keep him safe at night. So I get it. I do get it, Fraser. I love everything about that film, and it is highly quotable, still quoted today. I want to use several of those quotes to my students, but it would be deemed inappropriate, so I don't. I've probably on more than one occasion said to my son, you're only in charge of two things right now, Jack and shit, and Jack left town. Quite possible I've said that to him a few times over his life. It's as terms of cult films, it earns everything, all the credit that it's just amazing.
Now, I don't want to completely derail us, but I just wanted to ask, because knowing your relationship with just horror in general, have you seen the remake? Will you see the remake?
That is an excellent question. I have not seen the remake because everything I heard about it in its release, I went, this is probably too much for me. And my wife went with my middle brother, and I believe her brother, when he was still living here. She came home and went, no, you are not seeing this. And I went, okay.
So,
because I've heard that the scene where she loses her hand, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah. So I had the honor and privilege of seeing that at South by Southwest the year that it came out. I think that was like 2013 maybe. And to see that movie with, I think, like 1,200 people in the Paramount, with Bruce Campbell there and Sam Raimi there and Fede Alvarez there, like that, and seeing Cabin in the Woods at South by Southwest are two of my favorite just theatrical experiences of all time, because that movie, to use the terminology of the kids, rips.
Does it slap?
It slaps. It bangs. It is a banger.
Yeah, it is.
And man, it is so unrelenting. And Cabin in the Woods really is like a love letter to that genre, and it really just sort of buttons it up nice and almost makes the argument for, hey, don't ever make one of these again, which maybe we should have listened to that with Farrell to a degree. But
I liked Farrell.
No, I'm just saying, like, it's the definitive piece of the Cabin in the Woods, and then Evil Dead comes out, and it's almost like the rebuttal. It's like, no, we still have a little bit to give. And I just am such a big fan of that remake, and anytime someone hasn't seen it, I really just sort of try to get them to check it out. But in your case, yeah, I mean, I think it still holds the record as maybe the most fake blood used in a movie. There's a scene at the end where it's literally raining blood, and I think they used 2 tractor trailer trucks filled with fake blood to make that scene happen.
I haven't seen the 3rd season of Evil Dead, the TV show, yet. Is it as much blood? Have you watched it?
Only the 1st season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it as much blood as they use in that show? Because they use a lot.
I would say yeah, but I think it's more comedic in the show, right?
Well, of course.
I think there is still some really funny elements of the remake, and definitely some sort of like poking fun sort of elements, but for the most part, it's played pretty straight. And
that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. And I love Don't Breathe, by the way. I went to the sneak for that, and I took a buddy and was like, please protect me. Don't be alarmed if I grab you. My buddy Sean is like 6 foot something, and he enjoys these things, so I would take him to the horror films. And I walked out of that movie going, this was amazing! And it is. I love Don't Breathe. And so I wish I could watch Evil Dead because I want to see more of the director. But no.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So, what is your last pick, good sir?
So, like you were saying, I really just sort of agonized over this. And I mean, I could name so many movies. I'm just going to roll off some names that are not included here. Troll 2, Return of the Living Dead, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Ninja 3, The Domination, Samurai Cop, Street Trash. They all could have been in this spot, honestly.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen any of those, please check them out. But for my third pick, I'm going with Donnie Darko, because it's one of those movies that sort of redefined the idea of a cult movie to me. Like, I saw that on VHS in 2002. I just took a chance on it at the video store, and I watched it, and I was like, what is this? Like, what is this movie? Like, it was one of the first movies that I watched that I felt like maybe I didn't get it, or maybe there's something to get. Before I had to take the tape back, I watched it probably 2 or 3 more times, and ended up re-renting it. And then that sort of started the fascination with it. And I got it on DVD and, all that. But it's such a weird movie because I think it did receive some sort of limited theatrical release in 2001, but the advertising of the movie involved a lot of the shots of the plane crashing, and this is right after September 11th, and so it was one of those movies that got buried because of that. And so all the advertising for it was pulled, and certainly in my small town in Virginia, it didn't come to the theater probably anywhere within driving distance there. So the only way to see it was on VHS, and to me that, like we were saying, it picked up that word of mouth that way. I think most people who saw it on DVD a few years after it came out, or even when it was re-released with the director's cut, I think around 2004. I think that's really where a lot of the cult following started taking off from it. And it's very quotable. It has some very memorable imagery in it that's kind of hard to shake. And I think for a lot of people, you may have known Jake Gyllenhaal as a child actor, but I think that's the one that really put him on the map and really sort of gave him a career. So.
And Patrick Swayze is phenomenal in that. After all the films he'd done prior to Donnie Darko, this really showed a different side to him.
I love Patrick Swayze.
Yeah.
I'll just say it.
Yeah.
Sir Daryl.
My last film, with no need to wax poetic about it, it's Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
It's as cult as cult gets. I'm not even going to talk about it. What's your pick, Doug?
Well, first of all, real quick, something I found out researching another show that we're doing, Frasier, on first-time directors. That is apparently the first film that Terry Gilliam, and I forget the...
Jones.
Who?
Terry Jones.
Yeah, that was their first direction.
Mm-hmm.
It's looking at the list, and Daryl and I are going to discuss this in a little bit, or in the past. I don't know how this is going to work, but the sheer number of first-time directors that just knocked it out of the goddamn park is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of them. That is absolutely one of them. Mine is one that somehow, miraculously, neither of you picked. So this is so exciting. It is a hard film in some cases to watch, not in the way of Evil Dead is or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, more in the way of Donnie Darko, except not for the philosophy, for the emotion. And it's 1994's The Crow.
Oh, yeah.
I came to this film in the video store.
Yeah.
And this is, again, pre-internet, or at least pre-internet in my house. And I wasn't aware of what had happened to Brandon Lee. And I wasn't even aware of the comic at the time. But I watched that film, and it just struck a chord. And, of course, that soundtrack just everybody that was dealing with teen angst in the 90s listened to this soundtrack. I still listen to this soundtrack. Golgotha Tenement Blues is an amazing song. But that film, even to this day, resonates. And it is devastating to learn that this was Brandon's last film. Certainly because it is a wonderful film, even though not the strictest adaptation of a comic book. But it is its own thing. And it may never get remade at the rate at which they get a director, lose a director, get a lead, lose a lead. But by itself, it has earned its spot in cinema history for not only the direction, which is incredibly strong, or the cast that is phenomenal, many of whom that have gone on to do more great work, but just as a resting place, if you will, for Brandon Lee. And for me personally, oddly enough, I have a happy memory with this film. I went to a summer camp for 2 weeks and somehow found out that they were renting movies for us for the one weekend that we had at the camp. And whatever they were, it was like this terrible shit film. And I'd commented to them about, I was like, nobody's going to want to watch these. These are terrible. And they went, fine, if you can ask everybody what they want to watch, we'll get them. So it did. I literally ran around campus at Brevard College that we were living in for the summer. It was like, hey, they rented these shit movies. What do you guys want to see? We ended up renting Seven and The Crow.
Nice.
That's like, yeah, a bunch of high schoolers, probably not old enough to go to the theater to watch either of these films. Thank you for letting us do that. But I love that film. And I forget if Crystal's seen it or not. So now that we have about 4 hours in the evening, Connor's going to sleep early now. Yay! Maybe I'll sit her down to watch it.
I love that movie and came to it the same way, was captivated by the box art and the concept of it. And I think really one of the most influential movies of the past, 25 years. I mean, if you look at that movie and then you watch something like The Matrix or The Dark Knight, I mean, it's kind of hard not to miss those influences of him running across the rooftops like Trinity, or him at the end of a long conference table like the Joker. And, I mean, there's so many parallels and sort of influential bits to it. And when you talk about the dark and gritty superhero movie idea, I think pulling from stuff like RoboCop and The Crow, it's just really hard to miss those influences. And speaking of Brandon Lee and The Crow, I just watched Shudder has a series called Cursed, and it's a 5-part documentary series that just sort of talks about movies that have this stigma of being cursed, like Poltergeist or The Exorcist. And The Crow is one of those episodes, and it was just fantastic. Like, they interview the makeup effects artists and people that were involved in the movie, and they also talk to some sort of firearms experts that explain what went wrong with the stunt that killed him. And there's so many very touching insights from people that worked on that movie, and also a subplot that I actually somehow never knew about, in which Michael Berryman played a skull cowboy kind of character. And they show all of the makeup that went into building that character, and they had to cut it from the movie because it was scheduled after he was shot, and they couldn't do those scenes effectively. And I just think, man, what a different movie it might have been with that in it. But yeah, one of my all-time favorite movies, and I always try to, if I hear someone hasn't seen The Crow, like I'm in the car, like driving with the Blu-ray, like, we're gonna watch it. It's happening. So.
I've wanted to rewatch that for some time, but at least for me, it carries so much emotional weight that I need to be in a headspace to watch it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so these were some really great picks. Of course, I say that, and you guys included mine. So, you all have great taste. You have great taste. Well, I think we've run a little long, so I hope everybody enjoyed this extra special episode. Frazier, thank you so much for joining us for this.
Yeah. It was fun.
We try to make it entertaining, and if you ever want to come on again, you're obviously more than welcome to do so. We had originally batted around, should we do Star Wars as a theme, something like that, and then we realized there's like 11 films if you include the Endor stuff, so kind of a narrow pool.
Yeah.
But we'll find a way to make it interesting for you. In fact, we could always, what would be fun, Daryl, and I'm just going to pitch this now while we're still recording, is we should do another trivia thing, but bring back Thomas and pit Thomas against Frasier. I think that would be fun. We could put Hollywood up against Frasier.
Thomas Hollywood Manning, I'm here for it.
Oh, man.
Mr. Freddie Highmore himself. Excuse me, hashtag not Freddie Highmore. We could totally do that. But seriously, Frasier, thank you so much for coming. Where can people find your work beyond Slash Film, Poppin' Pizza's first showing? Where can they find you online?
If you're on Twitter, at Adam Frazier, Frazier, I pretty much post everything that I'm doing there. And poppinpizza.com is my personal website. It's attached to the newsletter. You can find a lot of stuff there. So,
wow. And he's got some great stuff out there, folks. And I'm actually signed up for it. When you put it out there, I was like, sure, because I want to know about movies that I will probably never watch.
That's the story of my life, Douglas.
At least I can always recommend them to other people.
Yeah,
there you go.
I just had someone message me yesterday or last night and was like, "Hey, thanks for the recommendation on Deathgasm." I was like, "When did I recommend that? Like, when did that happen? Like, I don't remember that. Like, I mean, I like that movie a lot, but then I realized it was part of a like suggestion on the latest Poppin' Pizza, which was about We Summon the Darkness, heavy metal horror stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that's sort of one of my fortes is like something comes out and I can tell you 10 movies that it's probably just like to a degree. So that's sort of part of the newsletter's appeal, I guess.
Yeah, right on.
I'm telling you, Daryl, bring them on. Let's do some trivia. Let's put them to work.
I'm with it. I am with it.
Well, Daryl, do you have anything else to add to this slightly extra long episode?
No, man. Frazier, thanks for coming on. We'd love to have you back. Yeah, I mean, Douglas, he said it's a narrow pull from all the Star Wars, but yet a lot of our movies already ended up being his movies on this show.
Right.
So I think we might be able to navigate the Star Wars.
It kind of devastated me a little bit. I was like, I did all this research and work, and you've taken 2/3 of my list. No.
Yeah, me and Frazier definitely coordinated beforehand. We're like, how can we fuck over?
Yeah,
let's fuck over Doug on a good Sunday.
Daryl knew. He knows how I feel about Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
Knew it.
But yeah, thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, seriously, thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank all y'all for listening. I guess we'll be back sometime soon, in 2 weeks ish, with another episode.
Continued.
To be continued. Until then, you guys take it easy.
Bye.